Hello, and welcome to Come Play With Us, a spooky storytelling podcast. My name is Leela, and I'm joined by my evil twin,
Ruby. We're actually both the evil twin. We're both writers with non-writer day jobs. We believe in the power of great storytelling, so we've invited guests with the challenge of weaving a tale about real-life hauntings and paranormal activities with the sole purpose of scaring the shit out of us.
We'll rate them to see how they've done. Our ratings go a little something like this: scared shitless, some chills, and I think I'll be able to sleep tonight. Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we have a brand new guest, my friend and former colleague, Adam O'Brien. You can say hi.
Hi. Thanks for having me on. Long time, first time.
Yeah, long time listener, first time guest. I love it. And today you're going to be attempting to scare the shit out of me and Ruby.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I am.
Should I do the reminder of our... No, because we already did that. That happens in the intro, so I won't go over our ratings. But feel free to take it away. I'm gonna make my room really dark so that I can be...
Well, you should... Well, I was going to say you should probably remind Adam, but if you've listened to the podcast and you already know what the different ratings are. Yeah. I'm excited about this. This is a story I've kind of learned a lot about over the years, and then I did a little bit of a deep dive in preparation for this. So this is actually less of a ghost story and more of maybe a little bit truer than some stories you're used to hearing on here. So I'll jump in. So this is the legend of Sawney Bean. So the world, it's full of monsters. Unfortunately, all too often those monsters turn out to be human, although some stretch the definition of that word. So 500 years ago, a man named Sawney Bean and his clan lived in Scotland, where they murdered and cannibalized more than 1,000 people over the course of 25 years. Alexander Bean, Sawney, was born in the 16th century in the area of Scotland known as East Lothian. It's just a little bit east of Edinburgh. He married Black Agnes Douglas. It's hard to find too many scholarly sources from back then, and to kind of divorce that from the growth of the legend. But, various texts describe her as viciously inclined. She was evidently accused of witchcraft, although I think there's a lot of that back then, just hedge witches and so on. So Sawney, his father was a ditch digger and a hedge trimmer, and that's the kind of thing that, in the 16th century, if your father did that, you did that. But he didn't want to do that. That wasn't what he wanted to do. So, he grabbed Agnes and they left home and they went over to the west coast of Scotland in a region which today is South Ayrshire. So as the years went on, they had 6 daughters, 8 sons, 14 granddaughters, and 18 grandsons, most or all of whom are thought to be the product of incest among the family. They lived in a coastal cave that ran for almost a mile, went down almost 180 meters below the sea line. At high tide, the entrance to the cave was hidden, letting them remain hidden there for decades, even to people in nearby villages. Wait, I have a question. Is there a reason why they chose to live like that, or chose to live in a cave? Like, were they fleeing people, or?
Some people have wiring wrong in their brain, I think. It's hard to tell from something in the 1500s what they did. They're brutal, bad people. But we're going to get to even more fun details about that.
Oh, okay.
So, again, not caring to make a living by manual labor, they began to ambush individuals or small groups of travelers at night. Man, woman, and child, they never robbed anyone without also murdering them. No witnesses. They would take their victims back to their cave where they would dismember and devour the bodies. They cleverly carried some body parts a distance away from their home and cast them into the sea so that they would wash up on local beaches, leading people to believe it was just wild animals that got to these travelers that went missing. So as the years went on, the people in the nearby villages became increasingly paranoid. No one knew if their neighbor was a murderer, depraved, soulless. Search parties were sent to find them, but they were careful, leaving really no more trace than the phantoms they seemed to be. The townspeople still were terrified. They lynched several people they suspected to be guilty, and the disappearances just continued more and more every year. Several innkeepers were executed. People thought that's the last people to see them alive, it's very likely. And so they closed down their businesses, leaving travelers with nowhere to stay. And so this really, apparently all of Western Scotland kind of was thrown into chaos because people couldn't travel. People were afraid to leave to travel in groups smaller than 20, 30. So while the clan was impressively, horrifyingly discreet, they were eventually discovered. One evening, a man and his wife were riding home from a fair on their horse, and they were attacked by the clan. The man, he fought bravely, ferociously. He had a pistol and a sword. His wife, unfortunately, was pulled off the horse in the scuffle and set upon by just the women of the group, which I thought was interesting. As the man told it, they immediately cut her throat and drank her blood as hungrily as if it were wine. Then they ripped open her belly and pulled out her entrails.
All right, I need a second.
Okay.
Because my imagination is, that's a lot.
It's a lot.
How many?
It was a lot, and I'm also impressed that this kind of detail really carried down through hundreds of years without being, Cinderella fairy tale, so to speak.
Wait,
have you? You said that this wasn't going to be scary.
I said it wasn't going to be a ghost story.
Wait, so have you seen Barbarian?
Mm-hmm.
It kind of reminds me of that, of like how he was making these like incest children, and they were turning into these like feral creatures.
Like every
that were,
generation,
like,
I could see that.
killing people. Yeah.
Yeah, incest usually doesn't improve the temperament of a family.
No.
If you're
I'm just thinking about that X-Files episode that was banned. That we actually
Wait, which one?
We ended up watching it.
One.
It was an incest family, and we actually ended up watching it when it was on broadcast because our brother watched it. So we watched it. I remember being so disturbed, and apparently it was banned from future broadcasts, like from reruns. But I think it's wherever it's streaming. I don't know where it's streaming. You can see that.
Wait, but what's
now.
the story in that one?
It was an incest family, and then there was like it's like a farm or something, and they go and they I forget if it was both of them or one of the detectives goes in, and I just remember this scene where they hear a noise like someone crying for help or something, and they go under the bed and they pull it out, and it's this woman, but she has no limbs. She has like her arms and her legs have been cut off at the joint.
They might have been inspired by this.
Yeah, they could have been. I don't know, how many people did they murder before this part happened, before this thing with the horse?
Up to now, I think this is getting toward the end. So that was about over 1,000 people, it's estimated.
Oh my God.
Although, I mean, they didn't keep hits of everybody, but I think they did their best to account people that went missing in the area.
Wow.
25 years plus they were doing this over. I mean, a cave that was almost impossible to find. I'll get back to it. So I'm not sure how reliable a quotation it is, but the man had said, after they drank her blood, this done, they ripped up her belly and pulled out all her entrails. Appalled and enraged, naturally, the man fought all the harder, such that he held his ground against them and forced until a large group of people coming from the same fair happened to pound them. The Beans, now being, outnumbered, outmanned, outgunned, they fled, and the group brought the man to a magistrate in nearby Glasgow, who took his report of the events and then relayed it to the king. So finally, with a solid lead, the King of Scotland himself gathered a team of 400 men, along with bloodhounds, to root out Sawney Bean and his people. With the help of the dogs, they finally found the Beans in their cave, surrounded by evidence of their atrocities, limbs hung up on the wall to dry, body parts pickled in barrels to keep them fresh for later consumption, and all manner of items looted from the victims.
jewels, clothing, everything. The family was captured, bound, and brought back to Edinburgh. Every one of them was man, woman, and child sentenced to death without a trial, as their crimes were so vile they could hardly be considered human. The men had their sex organs cut off and burned, then their hands and legs severed, and they were left to bleed out over the course of hours. Agnes, her daughters, and granddaughters were made to watch this as 3 massive bonfires were built, and then they were burnt at the stake. As Sawney died, his last words reportedly were, "It isn't over. It will never be over." So this is kind of a story that has evolved and influenced a lot of things. So this directly, I believe, inspired Wes Craven's The Hills Have Eyes, which some listeners might know better from Alexandre Aja's 2006 remake. It also influenced the Wrong Turn series, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, countless other horror movies. As you said, X-Files, probably the DNA of this story is in there. Yeah, so I'll just give you an idea of kind of where I was getting the information, trying to find a lot of different sources. Again, it's hard to find something so old that's not just cribbing other ones. There was a publication at the time, the Newgate Calendar from the 1800s. And there's a book of moral tales about crime. So it's kind of vague, but ostensibly it said, if a family had 1 book in their home, it was the Bible. If they had 2 books, it was likely the Bible and this. So this would have been a story that children heard growing up.
Oh my God.
Why would you share the story with kids? Like, gather around, children. Let's talk about this cannibal murder family.
Well, because first off, I don't...
Suppose stories
Maybe to scare them, to don't wander too far from home.
Well, I mean, what other... I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but like, what other entertainment did they have? I mean, the news was
better stories about fairies and stuff.
I don't think people had filters back then.
I feel like it was a warning. I feel like it was like, because most of these stories have like, there's like a warning at the end. There's like, they're like morality.
There's no warning. It's how do you like, don't get eaten?
I think it's don't wander too far from home.
Okay. Well,
that's what I think it is.
Well, I don't know, what year again was this stuff, were they executed?
There's not solid years. This is around the end of the 15th, beginning of the 16th century.
Oh, so it was a while
So I'm going to
back.
say like
Okay.
16 to 1650, give or take.
Okay, because even the manner of execution was just so incredibly ridiculous that now it tracks that it was from the Middle Ages.
Yeah,
apparently that was an execution style that was usually reserved for treason, which, as you can imagine, was the worst crime in the Middle Ages.
Until you met cannibals. And then it was like, well, this is actually worse, so let's go from there. Anyway, sorry, continue.
But like, even the kids, like, you guys couldn't like try and rehabilitate the little feral kids. Like, the kids didn't really know what they were doing. They were told to do this. I don't know. It's also Scotland.
The whole gene pool had to go
in the 16th century. Yeah, that's true.
I don't know how they would have
that did stick with me too. I mean, you figure if some of them were their grandchildren, this is over the course of 25 years. Some of them have to be under 10.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But,
I think it's really cruel that they didn't try to rehabilitate the children, but then also at the same time, it's like the allegory of the cave. Like, this is their world. They don't know how would you, especially back then. Like, at least now, if you want to rehabilitate a feral child like Mowgli from the Jungle Book, we have resources for that now. I don't know what they had in the Middle Ages.
Therapy and stuff. Yeah.
I don't know how they
Still
would do it.
so cruel. I mean, they were really
it
cruel
is.
back then with kids anyway.
Yeah.
Child labor and stuff.
There's an even more apocryphal story that said, one of the daughters of the clan might have survived, but was then hanged when they found out who she was in the village she later settled in.
Oh my God.
I mean, the fact that he said this isn't over, I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I always wonder what that means. Like, was that just like a threat just to like scare them because he's mad, or like?
He probably didn't think it was over. He probably was like, I will be back in some way.
And then you get Jack the Ripper.
It reminds me of the guy in Ghostbusters too.
Which movie is that? Remind me what happens in that one.
Ghostbusters 2.
Is that the one with
Death
the
is
marshmallow?
but a door, time is but a window, shall return.
Yeah, well, basically
The guy
he
in
got
that painting.
he got that from this guy. That's exactly
And who
what he
knows?
said.
I mean, that also could have been put in by storytellers to spice it up at the end, to
That's
scare
true.
kids from straying too far from Home Alone.
Mm-hmm.
Stay away from cannibals. And caves. Stay away from caves. Because back then, like, you know, you don't have a flashlight. You're a goner. You get lost in a cave, you're gone.
You had like a torch.
No, you're gone.
I asked my wife after reading this, I said, do you want to go to a cave in Scotland where a bunch of cannibals live? And she said, why would I not want to go to a cave in Scotland where a bunch of
Of
Wait,
cannibals
course
the
you
live?
cave still exists, and they like do tours and stuff there at the cave.
Yeah, it is.
I feel like it's like Barbarian, where they're like have some descendants still like in there that they didn't round up, that like were like deep in the cave that they couldn't find.
Yeah, because that's a lot of people.
The town is Lendlefoot, a small village located on Carleton Bay, parish of Colmanel, in the old district of Carrick, now South Ifer, south of Girvan. Scotland has 1,000 different ways it's divided up, but apparently
Yeah.
there is one
I don't
town
know
that
where
does
any of that-
actually make some.
Yeah, none of that like
I don't know where
registered.
any of that is. Is it like southwest? Oh, like, where is it?
Yeah,
when
so
it-
this
okay.
is like if you follow the coast a little bit down from Glasgow on the west
Okay.
side. So
Okay,
it's southwest Scotland before it turned into England, really.
Wow. Okay.
I
sorry.
wonder if there's ever been any mysterious disappearances or murders in the area near the
They
cave.
couldn't find any.
I'm sure
Nothing
they got
occult-
everybody.
I don't know. He said this isn't over. I think he's got some descendants in there in that cave, like Barbarian.
I think he didn't know what was going on. I think he thought he was more powerful.
He probably did. He probably thought he was, you know,
Yeah.
he's like a god
A wizard. Yeah.
because he keeps procreating with
Yeah.
his own kids.
Anyway, sorry, Adam. Go ahead. You probably have more to add.
No, I was really just going to comment on how the more I read about it, the more I just really saw how elements of this have really carried forward in just in mythology and storytelling, in, you know, the feeling of Scotland being a little bit remote and scary, and the things you'll run into aren't always totally human.
Yeah.
It's pretty creepy.
Yeah.
Plus, there's a movie. There was a caveman horror movie that came out a couple
What?
years ago. Yeah, I told you about it.
Caveman horror movie?
Yeah, I mean they're not cavemen, but it's just easier to say that. But it takes place like, I don't know, Neolithic or Paleolithic or something, and they and it's a horror movie, and they filmed it in Scotland because of how remote it is. And I think it's supposed to be like England or something like that, or probably Scotland. It's probably Scotland. I forgot what it's called. It was fine.
I'm gonna Google caveman's horror movie.
It was disappointing. It was a letdown. It was disappointing. But yeah, it was interesting. You could tell they all filmed it in natural light. Like it's actually good in that way. No one's wearing any makeup. Like it feels kind of more real. But then it just gets really dumb.
So that was really scary. I'll tell you right now.
That was really creepy.
It was you didn't hold back on the details, but you didn't have to give us too much either.
Maybe think about like I don't know which zombie George Romero movie it was where the guy is like grabbed by all these people, all these zombies, and they're all like and they're like disemboweling him like right there
with their
and, like,
with
his
their
head,
zombie fingers.
and his hands and his head like pops off. I forgot which movie it was because I know that Shaun of the Dead copied that
Yeah.
for a scene, but it was making me think about that, which is really gross and
Dave
scary.
the Dead, when he's yelling choke on it.
Maybe.
I don't know. Because I know that they all grab him and they all start going for his entrails, and then one of them pops off his head.
And they
And
don't.
they pull-
Zombies don't. I have a problem with zombies because they don't really. They waste food. Like you always see them and they pick up some chunk of guts and then they kind of shake it around their mouth, and then they just leave bodies just there. Like,
That's because they're actors who like dealing with corn syrup and
Well,
stuff.
I need
either.
some realism. I feel like real zombies would just not leave any meat on the bone.
I feel like zombies would just eventually like drop dead. Like I know that new zombies are being created, but I think new zombies are being created at a much slower rate than the early zombies. At some point in the winter, they would stop working. You know,
Like their machines.
yeah. So like if a zombie pandemic happened, it'd be like a year of chaos, and then they'd be like gone, and then it'd be the survivors.
All
What
right.
about when they thaw in the spring?
They get reanimated.
But the world ends for about 4 months, and then they're like, "Where'd all the zombies go?"
Yeah, and they
Well, I guess they're all
because they
right now.
froze. They all froze.
And then they just rebuild society.
Yeah, with whoever's left.
Yeah.
And then if there were like new zombies created, like they're at such a slower rate than like the older zombies that you can just outwalk them.
Yeah.
And then you're good. Yeah.
Yes.
I'd watch that.
Yeah, no one would watch it. We would only watch it because it wouldn't fall into any of those tropes. It would just be like a day in the life or like a year in the life.
Yeah. Well.
But yeah, so
Yeah.
unrelated, before Leo asked me to do this and I picked a story, I'd actually seen the original Ghosts Have Eyes not too long ago. And it was very much, you can see where it's coming out of, like, a family of, they're like, oh, a baby, oh, that's good eating, we just save that for later, that's a special treat, and it's just real inhuman stuff. Which, and movies are heightened, like, who would really do that? Why is this family alone in the desert in a camper?
Yeah.
But it's also, it's like, no, these stories are actually not that new.
Yeah. I think that's the power of storytelling, right? And stories being passed down. I mean, I think that everything comes from somewhere, and like, not to say nothing's truly original, but I mean, there is inspiration out there deep in history.
I think it's just like the horror is just like in how like horrifying humanity can be.
Yeah.
And disgusting and crude and violent and murderous and cruel. Yeah, those movies scare me. Like I don't know why Todd wanted to watch Wolf Creek, and I'm like, we're gonna go to Australia in a month, and I was like, why?
I hate that movie. That's such a
That
scary
one's been on my
movie.
list. I haven't seen it.
It is so scary. It's really scary. I found it
And
horrifying.
it is one of those ones where like the characters, they don't make that many stupid decisions, but sometimes they do, and we were like yelling at the TV.
Oh, you watched it again?
Yeah, I was like, fine.
Was it scary the second time? Because in my brain, I've built it up.
No,
because
because the first time is always the scariest.
Yeah.
But then it's like, oh, I've already seen it. I already know what all happens.
Yeah. Okay. Well, watch it. I think they made some sequels too. But
Yeah.
watch it if you dare, Adam. All right. So just a reminder of our ratings, and I don't know why lately I have trouble remembering them for some reason. There's only 3 of them. But the least scary is I think I'll be able to sleep tonight. The medium scary is some chills. And the most scary, the scariest, is scared shitless. So I'll go first. I'll go first with my rating. I don't think I usually go first.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with scared shitless. And I'm gonna go with that because I don't feel like you didn't have to go into lengthy detail. You gave us exactly what we needed. You told us the history of the patriarch and what he did, and then you gave us a bird's eye view of the murders, but then that one last murder that they committed was just so horrifying. And I think because you don't give us too many details, the rest of it we have to imagine, and that using my imagination to think of those things really terrified me. So well done, you got me.
Mine is
I was like, were you gonna say anything?
mine is some chills because I wasn't as scared because this happened a long time ago. But if there was like all these unknown like disappearances and murders around the cave, then I think I'd be more scared, and I would be scared shitless. And I think it's because I just really was like, I think they left some descendants in that cave.
Yeah, you're holding on to that.
I feel like that would scare me. That there's like when it's so chilling. The final words of a murderer are always like the most chilling, and for him to say this isn't over, I'm like, did you leave some of your gene pool in that cave, And so it was just like, but because it happened so long ago, and I guess I wasn't so scared, but I do want to see that cave.
Yeah, I want to go visit.
Was there anything left behind in that cave, or is it just all been cleaned out?
Well,
I mean, I
all
know it was
the
like several hundred years ago.
grisly body parts and stuff.
Yeah, I assume they interred any of the remains they could
Oh, okay.
recover.
I don't know. I know they it's like a kind of a tourist destination. I don't know. It's a cave that you can't even see at high tide, so I'm sure it's dangerous to actually get in there. So I don't know if you can go in, but I know that it's at least the area is like a tourist destination because of the story.
So that
Oh,
makes
okay.
sense that
Wow.
like at high tide they'd be like somewhere in the bowels of the cave that where like the water isn't or something.
Hmm.
Yeah, because like I always think of like with like the caveman where it's like just like a dome and then they're just like in the, with their little fire, but no, that's not always the
Yeah,
case.
No.
Yeah.
yeah. I don't. It said the extent of the caves ran in for about a mile, so
Oh,
that's. I mean,
okay.
that's a long way
Yeah.
to be able to hide.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a lot of little corners and little crevices that some of his gene pool could have, hidden. I
Ruby,
mean,
right
they didn't
now,
go
by now they're
spelunking back
dead.
then.
By
They
now
didn't go
they're dead.
spelunking.
It's been
No,
500
I
years.
choose to believe that they're still alive.
It's possible. Changed her name to Clark, moved to Ireland, and then
Paul is not
And then found their way to America.
He's not a generational incest baby, okay? Multi-generational. He found a way. There's
Life
caves.
finds a way.
Yeah.
it does scare me a little bit, just like how relatively small the country is. I mean, we were Americans, so it's like there's so much country here, but to grow up 5 miles from Edinburgh and then move, 20 miles from Glasgow, and just be able to do all this for many years, it's like how. Maybe without technology, everything was just much more mysterious and scary. If
Oh, yeah.
their
Yeah, I don't know
master
how-
detective work was their master detective was a bloodhound.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
they're-
They
I
didn't do
don't-
like DNA swabs and stuff.
Yeah, but even then, like,
Dust
I think
footprints.
modern detecting or, modern police departments didn't even arrive until the 1800s, or no, like late 1700s, early 1800s. So, yeah, they had to go off of like bloodhounds and a magistrate. But yeah, I guess the detective was the king.
It makes you think of like how many other like stories there are like this of like these mass murderers aren't new, serial killers aren't new, but like how
I
many
actually
we've
have a
had.
book. I don't know if I got rid of it, but it's a history of serial killers starting from caveman time.
Well, someone could argue that humans are that early humans are serial killers because they killed off the Neanderthals and Denisovans. So
Probably.
yeah,
We did.
At an old job of mine, we were the buyers had tasked us with coming up with a bunch of books about serial killers, and we got into the differences between spree killers, serial killers, mass killers, family
So many.
annihilators.
Oh my
There's so many
God.
different kinds of really heinous
it's weird. There's different
classifications.
different genres of like serial killers. Like
Different flavors. God.
yeah,
I didn't even think about family annihilators. That's a
and then the mass murders.
yeah.
Because
All right.
spree is it's just a short amount of time and it's isolated and it never happens again.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
it's
something
like a
like
mall.
48 hours or something like it.
Yeah. It's like someone's shooting up a mall or a nightclub or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on and telling us this horrifying cannibal incest story that I'm that I'm that I'm pretty sure inspired the X-Files episode.
And maybe Barbarian.
And definitely Barbarian because it was a cave. That house is like a cave.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. The guy gets
basement.
built the cave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was so much fun. It was a blast. Thank you. And I'm sorry if I gave you nightmares.
Thanks so much for listening. If you'd like to get in touch, you can reach us at podcomeplayWithUs@gmail.com.
We'd love to hear from our listeners. So if you have real life ghost stories or paranormal encounters and you think it'll scare the shit out of us, please send them in. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye.